Nice. Way to go. Keep it going. Good job, guys. All right, Paul. I see you. All right, John. Finish on. Coach Carl.
Great job, guys.
Hey there, it's Coach Curl here, and welcome to episode 238 of the Today's Leader podcast. Today's guest is Chris Spurvey. Now, Chris is the author of It's Time to Sell, Cultivating the Sales Mindset, best-selling book. Now, Chris has a great history of sales and now helps businesses globally working through their sales process based around a strong value proposition. Now, the conversation is incredible, and it's in particularly eye-opening for me. Now, as we know, sales is not a comfortable process for many, and that includes myself. Now, one of the things prior to our conversation was Chris and I had made some failed attempts to actually connect so that we could do the podcast. The time zones were really challenging, but it was a conversation that I wanted to have. During our conversation, Chris shares some tips that you can apply immediately in your business, defining that everyone is a salesperson. He also shares the sales disqualification process, some real gold there for you, making sales a habit, and we discuss the concept of transformative selling. All I can say is there's gold in them thar hills in Newfoundland, Canada, and Chris enthusiastically embraces them. I so look forward to sharing this conversation with you straight after these words from Think and Grow Business.
The Coach Curl podcast is brought to you by Think and Grow Business, the home of the Think and Grow Business Mastermind. If you're serious about growing your business, get serious and join a mastermind group today. Find out more at thinkandgrowbusiness.com.au.
It's my pleasure to introduce to the Today's Leader podcast. I've got Chris Spurvey. How are you, Chris?
I'm wonderful, Tony. It's great to be able to make this happen. It's amazing. I love the idea that here I am talking to somebody on the other side of the world. Here I am in Newfoundland on the east coast of Canada. And for me, it's approaching fall, and for you, it's approaching spring. That's kind of freaky to me, but it's pretty cool. Yeah.
And we had a couple of false starts getting the times right.
Time zones. Yeah.
So it's been as I was just saying off air, Chris. I'm really looking forward to this conversation because you specialize in the sales mindset, and that's one thing that I know that I'm probably not the most comfortable at, going through the sales process. So a lot of the questions that I'll be asking today are probably from my own personal perspective, but I know that the listeners and the audience will get excited about them as too. But before we get started, tell us a little bit about the Chris Spurvey story.
Yeah, sure. Well, depending on how long you want me to go, I'll because you could wind me up and keep going on that topic. But maybe I'll just say my name is Chris Spurvey, and you can find me at chrisspurvey.com as my website. In terms of who I am and what I'm all about, I guess, like you, and before we hit record, you said sales wasn't easy for you, and it wasn't easy for me either. But I seemingly had the sales hat put on my head early in my life, early in my career, when I started my first business with a friend of mine, and because he was the technical guy and I was more of the business person, my friend Steve, who we started this business together with, said, "Spurvey, go and find us some customers." So I jokingly say that when I used to drive up to the potential customer's establishment, I was selling website design at that time. The lights were on when I drove in the driveway, but for some reason the door was locked and the lights were off when I went up to the door, and it was because they saw me coming, because I was that bad at sales. So I guess really I had to figure out a way to sell that was unique to me. The problem I had was I was approaching sales in the way I thought you were supposed to do it. The Zig Ziglar way, so to speak, because those were the books that I had read, the flamboyant character.
Yeah.
And I wasn't necessarily that at that stage in my career. So I needed to find a way to do it with that I felt comfortable doing it. So I guess that led then to really me moving through my career. I went through a phase where I was doing marketing, and then I found myself sitting behind the desk all day. And I read a book, Robert Kiyosaki's book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And in that book somewhere, I kind of deciphered that, you know what, if I don't want to be sitting behind a desk all day and I'm an entrepreneur at heart, maybe the first step is to get out and try to conquer this sales thing. And that led me then to finding some success in sales. Built a couple of companies with a couple of fellow co-founders, and we sold two companies, really. One of them to KPMG, a consulting company. Yeah. The other one to it was a technology company, a software development company, and we sold that one as well. And that led me then in 2015. Sorry, I'm going to get to the point here. 2015.
No, you're right.
2015. I was the chair of the Technology Association here in Newfoundland. And I was asked to speak to a group of entrepreneurs. And I asked these 30 entrepreneurs what were some of the first words that came to mind when they thought of the word sales. Yeah. And as I dug deeper into their replies, like a lot of them said revenue, a lot of them said success. But when I dug deep into having them think about themselves doing sales, then the truth came out. It was sleazy, manipulative, slimy, objection fighting. Yeah. That's when I knew, you know what, that's my calling. My calling is to help tell my story about becoming better and more effective at sales. And that led to my book, which I published in 2016. And I ultimately left KPMG because when we sold our consulting company to KPMG in 2013, I then spent 4 years as vice president of sales for KPMG. Okay. And my calling bubbled up in mid 2017. I resigned, and for the sole purpose of starting a consulting and coaching business, helping salespeople and entrepreneurs become more effective and confident in sales. So there you go. That's the full story.
Wow.
Maybe I'll just say, I jokingly, but not so jokingly, call myself Chris Spurvey 9.2. And the whole 9.2 is because I do believe we are all we should be always in a state of reinvention. Yeah. So I'm here sitting to you in August 2020, Tony, as Chris Spurvey 9.2.
9.2, and who knows when 9.3 is going to rock around.
That's right. That's right.
Constant learning. It's funny when you ask the question, what does sales mean? I know so many people, and I do often as well, just get a shiver down my spine when we're told we've got to, or we know we've got to go out there and sell. So, and I know you do a little bit of work around the mindset of sales. I think cultivating the sales mindset. So how can you shift people? How do you work with people to make that shift?
Yeah, great question. So I think most of us are carrying around, unless we are the extroverted personality who's not afraid to push the envelope and do sales the old way. Unless we are that, the 99% of us are people who grew up being exposed to sales in a way that, it was the used car salesman. It was the door-to-door vacuum cleaner salesman. It was those are the images on the screen of our mind. So I guess to answer your question, what I have learned is we think in pictures. And so if we think in pictures, and the pictures on the screen of our minds are what motivate us to act or not, and so when I say the word sales and we have a negative picture really deep down subconsciously, that's what we have to change. Yeah. So then how do we change that? Well, there's only really two ways to change. If you do the research, there's really only two ways to change. One is emotional impact, meaning well, we're overweight and we suffer a heart attack. And that's why when you walk into people's houses after they've been diagnosed with diabetes or they've had a heart attack, their fridges are loaded down with fruit, and they say, I'm going to change, right? And they change. Yeah. So that's one way to change. The other way to change is through a consistent spaced repetition of a new picture. So really, how do we change, and how do we change our image of sales? Well, first and foremost, we should define sales as being something attractive, which would be something along the lines of being of service, solving problems. I know for me, if I think about the service I do, I think about the salespeople, I think about the entrepreneurs that I work with, and the fact that they are home in the middle of the night, not sleeping, tossing and turning in sweats because their revenues are not consistent. They are failing to meet quota, failing to meet targets, and they're struggling personally as a result. So when I think about what I do, I help them with that. That's a beautiful thing, right? So I know my clients sleep better at night because of what I do. So sales to me is just getting out and sharing my value proposition. And the consistent spaced repetition, you change the image by taking that new image and in a relaxed format. I just finished my journaling for this morning where I read my vision. And in my vision, I am sharing my value proposition in a very cool, calm, collected, confident way. And I'm then working with people who put up their hand and say, yeah, you're what I need, Chris. So if we visualize this in a relaxed format for a period of time, we will start to believe it. And we will notice our actions changing as we go out into the market.
And that value proposition is so critical, and that because I'm starting to think as we work our way through this, Chris. So because I spent 30 years in the retail game, so working in corporate retail, and I always saw what I did, and I didn't see what I did as sales. I saw it as service. I served my customer.
That's right.
And I would build trust, but then when I've moved into my own business and started working with other people, all of a sudden it seemed to be a little bit more personal, I guess. All of a sudden I was selling me as opposed to selling the products that I used to sell. So it's that real shift of mindset and that value proposition and that understanding of the value that you bring.
Yeah, definitely. You have to believe in your value, right? And that is not easy. I agree. I can't say I'm perfect, right? And so I'm here talking about this, and I'm struggling with it just as much as you are. So it's not, but I do know there are some principles that if we follow, we will become better. And I think that's probably part of the motto is just every day trying to be a little bit better. But it does start with really trying to ensure we believe in our value proposition. And, because if we don't believe in our value proposition, our potential clients, they feel that, right? Yeah. And a lot of this is grounded in this understanding that people make the decision to buy based on how they feel, right? And then they justify it logically. So, we all have, and I'm here on video, I'm pointing to two sides. The top half of my brain is my conscious mind. The bottom half is my subconscious mind. We make the decisions at the subconscious level based on the energy we're feeling from the person who is selling us something. And then we go and we our filter become our conscious mind, which is, is the price right? Can we afford it and all that type of stuff. But if we, the logic won't work if we don't first create a feeling that we know what we're doing and we can solve the problem.
Yes, and get that emotional connection. You mentioned your affirmations and working through your vision. Is that part of it? So I saw doing research in relation with to yourself, Chris, that make sales a habit is one of the topics that you speak to. So is that part of that process?
It is. Yeah. Well, it is part of the process because make sales a habit. It means it becomes very organic. You are
Yeah.
always in a state of attracting to me new clients, and it becomes a habit, and we create consistent processes around us. There is a theory out there that there's a whole pile of people going out around, and they're following the law of attraction and the whole secret methodology and so on. So from a practicality perspective, we need to be doing things like time blocking. One of the things over the years that I have learned myself and through working with my clients is that because subconsciously sales is not natural for us, it's the first thing that falls off the side of our desk when we get busy, and we can always feel busy. So we need to be diligent in putting time in our calendars as sales time, and if we're not doing that, we're never going to make sales a habit, and we're never going to make consistent revenue a habit in our businesses. So that's where that comes from, but I look at it kind of as two pillars. One is setting ourselves up, the mindset, and being motivated, self-motivated through the vision. But then there is a practicality to it of you got to skin on skin, talk to people, set up meetings, share your value proposition, ask questions, and so on. And that's sort of the second stream of how do you make it all a habit.
Yeah, I've worked with a lot of small business owners when they're starting their businesses, and a lot of people really struggle with the concept of cold calling or getting out there and chasing their target customer. And quite often they'll say to me, Tony, I'm just not getting a yes. And so my next question is often, how many no's are you getting? Because it's part of an equation. I'm without being a sales expert, you've got to get the no's before you're going to get a yes. And in
That's
fact,
right.
I tell them, I let people know that you've got to be prepared to be punched in the nose, as in the nose, as in.
I love it. Yeah.
So that's part of the process. But I guess when I look at people door to door and doing the cold calling and whatnot, there's a real resilient character there. The people that can continually take that rejection and motivate them for the next call. So do you see a set personality type when you're working with great salespeople?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I think a lot of us would believe that it's the extrovert who is the good salesperson. But there is research out there that I have sort of validated that research with the people I've coached and consulting clients that I've worked with. It's not the extrovert that is successful in sales. So on a scale of 1 to 10, where a 10 is an extrovert and 1 is an introvert, I believe the actual best producer within that range is a 3.7. And a 3.7 is what they call an ambivert, which is they have characteristics of being an introvert and maybe a little bit of an extrovert in them as well. But what's underlying an ambivert is they are skilled at attuning, skilled at listening, skilled at asking questions. And when so I'll take it a layer deeper. And basically, what that means is they have an intuition. They are able to read the energy, read the energy of the person that they're talking to, and respond proactively to that energy and to what they're seeing. Versus an extrovert is likely to talk all over the person, and an introvert will be too timid and sit in the corner. So 3.7 is really where, and I'm willing to bet 90% of the people listening are ambiverts. So that's why I believe every one of us have an ability to sell. We just got to try to find a way to do it in a way that feels good for you, right? But there is a reality, and sales is a bit of a numbers game, so it's again, practicality. You can look at sales as a bit of a funnel, right? And so you're throwing raw materials into the top of the funnel, which is connections and conversations, and then you have your process for qualifying, or maybe even better, a mindset is disqualifying the person that you're talking to figure out if they truly are your ideal client. And, that's part of the mindset, right? You got to value what you do, but perhaps more importantly, value your time, because you can waste a whole lot of your precious time. And that's something we don't get back if we don't have a method for finding that ideal client who we want to work with, and we can bring value to them, but also, and so it's a synergy. It's a win-win when you have that mindset, right?
So a good salesperson knows the person to disqualify. So in effect, a good salesperson is actually the one saying no.
Exactly.
Because they're valuing their time, they're moving on.
Yeah.
Really interesting.
Tony, if you'll allow me to say this, I very rarely arrive at a point, and I don't know, maybe the real sales gurus listening to this show might say it's hogwash, but I very rarely get to a point where people say no to me. It's the intuition for me that I read the energy of the person I'm talking to or the company I'm talking to. And if I don't feel they're like, I actually disqualify them to the point I very rarely get a no, because I only do the final pitch to the people who I feel are 90% my ideal client or more.
That would be like a superpower, I reckon, there, Chris, to some of the people that are listening.
Perhaps. Perhaps. Yeah.
Because I can also imagine that extroverts could almost be so talkative that they could talk themselves out of the sale. Yeah, and which is then certainly not a skill to have when sales is your business.
No, definitely not.
So that what was the ambivert? 3.7.
Ambivert. Yeah, 3.7 on a scale of 1 to 10, and it's because they are skilled at listening and asking questions. And there is a bit of research out there that I stumbled upon. It's been a massive piece of research that I have leveraged in a lot of sort of keynotes and presentations I've done over the years. Which is, and I got to try to remember it. It's a research project of about 900 sales conversations. And the seller in those 900 successful sales conversations, the average amount of time that the seller spoke versus the customer spoke was 26% of the time. And when the seller spoke for that 26% of the time, they only spoke for 26 seconds and then went silent. And because what they were doing during the 26 seconds was they were asking questions. And as the conversation moved along, their amount of time increased, because what they were doing as the sales conversation moved along, they were asking questions in the first half. In the last half, the amount of time they spoke increased, but it was because they were summarizing and asking for confirmation and so on, right? So it's just proof that selling is not about talking. Selling is largely about listening. And I know that might sound a little bit we hear it all the time, but it is valid, right?
26%. That's surprising, but absolutely so relevant. You want to ask those qualifying questions. You want to really understand the problem. So
yeah, definitely.
So where do people go wrong with sales, Chris?
Where do people go wrong with sales? Well, I think it's a few things. I think they don't give it the consistent focus that they need to. They think that sales is a bit of a, you need to spend time at it, right? You need to spend time at the skill development. It's not something that is natural. And, and so that's where people go wrong, I fundamentally believe. And then when they go, and let me share this with you, perhaps where do people go wrong? They're not proactive. And they're not proactive when they go into the conversations and prior to the conversations. So one of the things that I help my clients with, my consulting clients, is, a few hours before you're going into a sales conversation, think through the eyes of your prospect. What are they feeling? What is the pain points that they have? And it's not just pain points as it relates to the service they are looking to buy. you want to build rapport with them by asking them questions about other aspects of their lives, about other aspects of their business. And so sitting down prior to going into these conversations and writing down questions that you might want to ask as a means to build rapport, as a means to uncover what their pains are, versus going in and just flying off the seat of your pants, which is what 99% of the times it happens that way.
Yeah.
That's how I would say is where people go wrong.
So really trying to get an understanding, a deep understanding of the client prior to going in and actually putting yourself in their shoes.
Yeah, exactly. Look through their eyes.
Great advice.
Best you can. Yeah.
So who's inspired you in your leadership journey? I mean, we've called the podcast is Today's Leader, and we've really focused on the leaders of today and the entrepreneurs of today. So who's been an inspiration for you on your leadership journey, Chris?
God, great question. I mean, if I was to identify one quote unquote guru, it would be Bob Proctor. Bob is an individual who now is 87 years old and still going strong. And there's kind of a lineage there, and I'm not sure. And I'm looking at the sign behind you there. I don't know how much you were influenced by Think and Grow Rich and Napoleon Hill, but Andrew Carnegie to Napoleon Hill to Earl Nightingale, who worked for Napoleon Hill a little bit, and then over to Bob Proctor. And so he's the living, from my vantage point, he's kind of the living guru of that lineage, right? And still going strong. So he's a huge inspiration of my life. From a practical perspective, again, if I look at my journey, we had our consulting company going, and I had a vision. And the vision was, I should not need to be the only person out there selling for this company. We had 70 consultants at one point in time. And what if we equip these consultants with the mindset and some methodology around selling? And our business blew up when we started to implement these getting all 70 consultants out there, growing their networks and so on. So there was a gentleman who we hired at the time, and his name is Joel Hunter. No one would know him listening, very unlikely. But Joel was a partner with Grant Thornton way back, back about 10 years ago when we did this. And he was my kind of role model for how to sell consultatively. And I now, when we sold our company and he's since retired, I have rekindled my friendship, and I consider him my personal coach. So anyway, Joel Hunter, he's a very inspirational individual in my life.
Excellent. So if you were to provide advice to the leaders of today and talk about some of those traits and characteristics of what you would believe a good leader needs today, what would that look like?
Yeah, great question. I think fundamentally you lead through example. Leadership is not only about, dictating to your people the way to do things. You really, truly do have to lead by example. And the greatest leaders that I have ever had in my life are people who are out there in the field doing what it is. So, and if you'll allow me to tie this back to sales, to me, the best salesperson in every business must be the CEO. And the organizations that are typically are going sideways are the ones where the CEO is not spending a portion of their time in sales and leading by example, getting out there, talking to customers, talking to prospects. And that to me, so leadership is all around, again, sharing the value proposition, but ultimately leading by example and being a shining example for your staff and for your managers.
Excellent.
Yeah.
What about how have you dealt with the business ups and downs, the peaks and valleys, the troughs, the failures? Yeah. How have you personally managed to walk through that sort of a process? So your relationship with failure, what does that look like?
Yeah, great question. I was asked that about a year and a half ago, and I'll share the same answer today. I don't ever arrive at failure.
Yeah.
So failure is not something you arrive at. Failure is something that you for me, what I do is, as I'm feeling as though I'm off track and leading towards or going towards, let's call it failure,
Yeah.
I pivot. And so so for me, I have a practice that in my life that I record. So all right, let me take it up a little higher. I believe that we all are capable of a quantum leap.
Yep.
We can make quantum leaps in our lives. That's why I refer to myself as Chris Spurvey 9.2. 8.0 to 9.0 are quantum leaps that I've made in my life. And so if you have a mindset of a quantum leap, which is not just incremental growth, it's big growth, you should have there's a methodology behind a quantum leap. First and foremost, it's it's a picking of an aiming point. It's identifying what you want. That's where the vision comes in. Step number 2 is relentless pursuit of the vision. Step number 3 is the mind work that keeps you focused and on the aiming point. Step number 4, the last step, is tracking. So back to your question, Tony, failure. So every day I spend a few minutes just writing down what's working and what's not working. And I just commit to doing more of what's working and less of what's not working. And therefore, you never really arrive at a point of failure. So that's my answer to that question. But I mean, that doesn't mean things don't get hard at times. I don't want to sound too Pollyanna. But I think it comes down to maintaining consistency in your focus on your vision, and consistently pivoting around what's working and just abandoning what's not working. I do believe in the fundamental philosophy of 80-20, right? 20% of our efforts produce 80% of our results. And every day, if we're just focusing a little bit more on the 20% and throwing away the 80%, then you're going to be successful.
Great advice. Excellent. What about energy? How do you maintain your energy levels?
Vision.
It sounds like you've got some really good discipline structures in place, which is fantastic. So how do you maintain your energy?
Yeah, great question. Mind work. So the third step that I referred to, I have a ritual every morning. So I have pictures of my vision that I spend 10, 12 minutes every morning. I have the pictures and I trace my finger around the edges of the picture in a relaxed format. Then what happens every morning is inspiration pops up, ideas come to mind that allow me to move towards the vision, the aiming point. And I write them down. And, I do believe that ideas are like slippery fish. If we don't write them down, they're going to wiggle away from us and somebody else is going to grab them. Let's write them down. And then when you end your ritual, you simply commit that day to doing one or two of the things that you've identified. And so how do you maintain your energy? Well, I think in the vision, you got to have you with good, positive energy, because that's what you will be. I think the byproduct of a good vision that puts goosebumps on your neck is, in other words, you love it, is self-motivation. And what the characteristic of self-motivation, one of the characteristics is energy. It's persistence, enthusiasm, and so on.
Yeah, very much. I interviewed a guy called Anthony Griffin, who's a rugby league coach, an elite level coach over here. And he was talking about the long-term outcome, or the long-term vision is what drives your short-term effort. Yeah. And it sounds very, very similar to that goosebumps that you get is going to drive what it is that you're doing each and every day. I love that concept of tracing your finger around your vision. I haven't heard that one before. Where have you, was that something that you took on board?
I learned that. I was introduced about 15 years ago to a gentleman by the name of Price Pritchett. Price authored a little handbook. So he owns a company in Dallas, Texas called Pritchett, his last name. His primary focus is on change management and mergers and acquisitions. But he wrote a handbook called U Squared, how to multiply your personal effectiveness in quantum leaps. And I picked up this little handbook and it blew the lid off my mind. It was 30 pages of such richness. And he wrote a subsequent handbook called the Quantum Leap Strategy. And in that Quantum Leap Strategy, he shares this idea that you don't just look at pictures, by tracing your fingers around the pictures, you're tricking your subconscious mind into feeling you're in the picture.
Wow.
And that's what all this is about, right? You got to trick your subconscious mind, because your subconscious mind is really where the magic is.
Yeah.
And but the opposite side of it is that's where our limiting beliefs are. It's where the beliefs are that we planted in our childhood, that we're not capable of a quantum leap, that we are only capable of so much, right? And so, so that's where I learned the price friction in the quantum leap strategy.
And so just the name again?
Price friction.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
The quantum
U
leap.
squared.
Yeah.
U squared is his first handbook.
Yeah.
And the second handbook is called the Quantum Leap Strategy.
I've got no doubt people are writing that down now or searching Amazon for that. So let's hope it's still available, because it sounds ideal. Yeah, it sounds awesome.
Well, I could tell you a pretty freaky story if you want me to.
Yeah, go for it.
So you talk about the idea of vision and the whole quantum leap strategy. So January, I never knew Price, but I only read his booklets. And January of 2019, I wrote in January 2019. I wrote in my journal that I want to get to know Price and understand better his business model. And I wrote it down, and I never acted upon it until August of last year. August of last year, I wrote in my journal after doing my ritual that I'm going to reach out and introduce myself to Price over LinkedIn, and I'd like to invite him to be on my podcast. I did it. He didn't reply. Fast forward a couple of months, I get a reply from a lady her name was Kim Webster. I never made the connection. It turns out it's Price's daughter. And Price had done a little bit of research around me, and he invited me down to Dallas for a couple of days to help him, because he was looking to take the U squared methodology and to get it out there to the masses a little bit more, and because he's now 78 and wants to create legacy. Anyway, to make a long story short, I walked away November the 11th and 12th after spending 2 days with Price sitting around his board table in Dallas, and I became a business partner with Price. And so I am now a certified partner of U Squared and the Quantum Leap methodology. So
excellent.
Yes. So there you go. But why I brought that up is because there's actually two sides of this, right? One side is the law of attraction and having a vision, but there's actually a biological element to it called the reticular activating system. It's at the base of our brains, and what it does is it sorts in and out of our lives what's important and what's dangerous. And when we set a goal, we write a vision and we read it every day, we are telling our subconscious mind what to go looking for. And that's how goals get accomplished, through the reticular activating system, sorting in and sorting out what is important to us and truly attracting to us the necessary ingredients to making it happen, right? So anyone listening, I won't bother talking more about the reticular activating system, but check it out. It's pretty serious stuff.
Yeah, it is. There's a book, Seeing Red Cars, which I've forgotten who wrote that now, but fantastic. Exactly the same thing around the RAS, the reticular activating system. Yeah,
well, a few months ago, I bought a white Toyota 4Runner, and I drove off the car lot, and I'm sure, but in the 10 minutes I drove home with my new vehicle, I saw 5 or 6 of these white Toyota 4Runners. They were there prior to me buying it, but I didn't see them because my reticular activating system wasn't seeing them.
Absolutely. Laura Goodrich, I think the lady's name was. So fantastic book. So what are you currently reading?
Oh my God, what am I currently reading? Let me look. Right now I'm reading 80/20 Sales and Marketing by Perry Marshall.
Yeah.
It's a phenomenal book that really frames up sales and marketing as a disqualification process versus a qualification process, and it's built on the science of Richard Knock and Pareto, which is the founder of 80/20. And it's a blow the lid off the top of your brain a book as well. So 80/20 Sales and Marketing, amazing book.
So the vision for yourself?
The vision for myself, so when I left KPMG in 2017, the vision is still fairly consistent. So here, let me tell you, you talk about ebbs and flows. I left KPMG in 2017, and the thing what happened to me was I ended up doing consulting. But my vision wasn't really consulting. My vision was coaching and doing a one-to-many strategy, right? So taking my value proposition and sharing it in a wider sense. But I ended up getting out and talking to a bunch of CEOs within Canada, and I ended up becoming consumed by consulting. When I looked at my return at the end of the year, I had done well. I had made progress, but it wasn't a quantum leap because there was a constraint. The constraint was my time.
Yeah.
So what's my vision? I'm staying true to the vision of one-to-many, so I can share my value proposition. And so, the building of a program and the attraction of clients in such a way that they enroll in a program, which is already in motion. But it's basically I'm going one-to-many, which allows me to live my vision, which is traveling free, building my business where and when I want, but ultimately serving my clients in a one-to-many approach.
So out of everything that you've accomplished, you've had a very accomplished career. What are you most proud of?
I am most proud of my book. When I decided to write my book, it wasn't with any intention beyond inspiring people to become more effective and change the mindset around sales. When I wrote my book and went to publish it, I realized outside of my mom and dad, I had no one to buy it. So that's what led me to start to write articles and start a podcast and launch my website. But the real linchpin in everything that's happened to me since 2016, when I published my book, is the book. So that's what I'm most proud of. And you know what? I went through university. I barely scraped by with a pass in English. I never ever saw myself as a writer, and that could have held me back, right? So I decided to engage help. I am also a believer in engaging in our signature strengths. So when I went to write my book, I thankfully Googled ghostwriting, but that led me to a coach. And that coach then walked me through a process to write my book. So I overcame my lack of writing ability through engaging in help, right?
And once again, that's just great advice for people. Complement your skill set with the right people around you. Absolutely. Yeah. So is there anything that I haven't asked you yet that I should have asked you, Chris? This is your chance to jump on. I know you got a podcast. I know you got a book. This is your opportunity to get on a soapbox and just go for it. Yeah.
Well, you know what? I mean, as you can tell, I'm passionate about this subject. And I do believe that we all have a vision. The question becomes, is our vision one that's proactive and growth oriented? Or is it a vision that is apathy, present state only? Or is it a negative vision? This is where imposter syndrome comes in, right? Because we will attract to us the vision. So why not be growth oriented? And because if we can, right? And we all can. And so that's just a matter of diligently picking what it is our aiming point is, and having it growth oriented. And reality is we are on this earth for one reason only, and that is to be of service to our fellow human beings. And unless we are setting up our lives in such a way that we're doing that, then we're not going to be fulfilling any real sense of purpose. And so, I really believe in this concept of vision. And if you don't have one, go start writing one and take it seriously, because it's what you will become. So that's my soapbox.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chris. How can people connect with you?
Yeah, go to my website, chrisspurvey.com. From a social media perspective, I am really only on one platform, which is LinkedIn. I'm
Very
80/20.
active. Yeah, you're very
Yeah,
active on LinkedIn.
yeah. So check me out there. Send me a request. And if you go to my website, you can download It's Time to Sell for free. So check that out. And yeah, that's probably the best way to connect with me.
Excellent. Chris, it's been an absolute pleasure. We finally connected. I've had a wonderful chat. I've learned
Yeah.
so much. And I'm sure that each and every one of my listeners has had the same experience today. Selling is not a dirty word. We shouldn't get those shivers down the spine. We should be proud of the value that we offer, and we should be confident. And I've got no doubt that tomorrow morning there'll be, well, I know for myself, I'll be doing some affirmations before I get going
Yeah.
of the day. So thank you very much for your time. It's been much appreciated.
You're welcome, Tony. It's been a pleasure.
Join the group of people impacted by seriously simple stuff to get you unstuck. The first book by Tony Coach Curl. Available at Amazon, Tony's Simple Stuff provides the tool for people to master your life and aspirations. 20% of every book sold supports Carter's cause.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that conversation, and once again, just so much gold, so many tips, so much advice there for anyone in business as to how to improve and maintain a great sales process. But two critical things that stood out for me was Chris's conversation in and around don't ever arrive at failure, or what people would perceive as failure, and his relentless pursuit of vision. And all I can say is, how great would that be if we never arrived at what we perceived was failure? This is a mindset shift, and Chris works around mindset in a fascinating way. As he mentioned during the course of the conversation, it's Chris Spurvey 9.2. So it's a continuing evolution of the best version of Chris. And I find that so relevant and so true to what what we see from successful people, what we see from successful leaders, and what we see in successful businesses. A continued evolution, continuous improvement of your own operating system. Now, Chris's belief around quantum leaps is also something that is incredibly exciting, and you can see that right throughout the conversations. Now, the funny thing is, quantum leaps, when we work towards a quantum leap, one thing I know is that any sort of a leap, any sort of adjustment, any sort of a step forward requires a disciplined approach. So a quantum leap absolutely takes a disciplined approach. They won't just happen. You're not just going to suddenly become version 10.0 of yourself after being version 9. So this is about a quantum leap. They won't just happen. But what happens when we do set about chasing or driving ourselves towards making that quantum leap, maybe the worst thing that we do is that we simply move forward. And maybe for many of you listening, that may just be enough to get you moving towards your next shift or your next step forward. Now, I mentioned during the podcast that the book called Seeing Red Cars, it was by a lady called Laura Goodrich, and this is a really great place to start to learn about the reticular activating system, the RAS that we all have. Fantastic book with some really good, valuable, practical work instructions that will help you start that process of taking the shift. Once again, a huge thank you to Chris for his time, and I know that he added some real value to our audience today. Make sure you check out Chris's book, because ultimately, if you're in business, it is time to sell. Don't forget to check out Chris at chrisspurvey.com, and he has his resources page there where you can access his podcast and his book, as he mentioned. So in today's disruptive world, good leadership skills will always stand you in great stead. If you are looking to build better leadership skills, consider my businesses, Think and Grow Business and the Coach Girl Academy. Think and Grow Business is the home of the Think and Grow Business Mastermind, soon to become the Today's Leader Mastermind, where we focus on personal, professional and business growth. Check that out at thinkandgrowbusiness.com.au. The Coach Girl Academy has over 78 programs to help you build a better you. Join for just $1 for the first 30 days. It's the academy that equips you to enhance your mindset, your leadership, and your business. Check it out at thecoachgirlacademy.com. Remember, where you are standing stronger, braver, and wiser. Don't forget the golden rule. Yes, don't be an arsehole. I'll see you all next week.